10 years had a way of reshaping memory and ambition. Evelyn Hart walked into the charity gala like a force of gravity, calm, impeccably dressed, a name that opened doors. Her company had become more than a brand. It was a standard. She moved through well-wishers with the ease of someone who knew how to make moments work in her favor. He stood by a pillar as if he belonged to the architecture. Marcus King looked older, his hair threaded with silver, but his presence carried the same honest gravity that had once made a small apartment feel like home. They had married young, two people with different maps for life. She left to chase a future that swallowed the past. He stayed and built a life grounded in the neighborhood they both knew. When their eyes met, the room tightened around them. For a moment, the orchestra dimmed to a memorable silence. They greeted each other politely, trading the safe small talk people use to navigate old ties in public places. Evelyn managed the perfunctory interview requests. Marcus watched, quiet and steady. A child shattered a glass on the far side of the room. A few guests reacted with irritation, another with amusement. Marcus moved immediately, steadying the boy, kneeling, calming him with the same patient authority he used to teach young apprentices at his workshop. Evelyn watched and felt something unfamiliar and aching, a memory of warmth that had nothing to do with success. Later, outside on the cool street, Marcus waited near the curb. He waved when he saw her. The motion was simple, a hand lifted, decades condensed into an invitation. Evelyn stepped toward him. "Marcus," she said, voice soft and surprised. "You look good," he said. "You look like a woman who has learned how to shape a world. And you look like a man who knows how to fix it," she replied, surprised at the fondness when the words left her. They spoke in the way two people who had once been intimate learned to speak. Careful, honest when politeness could be traded for truth. Marcus told her about the community workshop his father had started, how he kept it alive, teaching skills to kids and neighbors. Evelyn spoke of acquisitions and boardrooms, of nights alone in glossy apartments that felt like stages. She thought she had arrived. He had created a rival of another kind. He listened when she spoke, but she could see his life in the way he described the workshop: sawdust on the floor, a radio playing, laughter from benches. The image softened the sharp edges of her achievements. "I kept something," Marcus said. "Not glamorous. It just matters." Evelyn reached into her purse and produced a faded photograph she had kept, a rooftop picture of two young people with bright, naive eyes. She handed it to him. He smiled and then dug into his coat and took out a small, worn key on a ribbon. "This is the workshop key," he said. "My father's. We use it for the community. I wanted you to see it, to see what it means." The gesture was quiet and exact. For Evelyn, raised in environments that equated value with public validation, the key landed like a new weight of meaning. It wasn't a check or a headline. It was access to a place where people learned to stand on their hands and build something steady. "Show me," she said before she could question herself. They drove to a low brick building that smelled like work and possibility. Inside, teenagers and older neighbors bent over projects. A woman taught welding to a young father, and a small radio narrated the rhythm of hands at work. Marcus moved through the room as if it were his living room. He introduced Evelyn gently. The room listened. A boy presented a small metal sculpture with pride. A woman spoke about how a repair class helped her find a job. The stories were immediate and raw, change measured in small sentences, in fixed windows and paid shifts. Evelyn found herself asking about budgets, about sustainable programs, about apprenticeships. Her mind moved from applause to planning. She wanted to give, but in ways that would last. Marcus watched, relief and hope in his face. They did more than plan. Evelyn promised equipment, funding, and internship placements. Marcus promised to keep the workshop independent, a place run by the community. It was partnership without spectacle. Over the following months, the workshop changed. New tools arrived, and with them came classes, stipends, and a program that placed young learners into real jobs. People who had once drifted found a rhythm. The neighborhood brightened in small increments. More lights in windows, fewer empty lots at dusk. Evelyn started making regular visits, not for press, but because work there filled a space public accolades never touched. Their relationship folded into a new form. They were not rekindling a romance from youth. They were rediscovering one another as adults with different capacities for love. They argued about logistics and budgets and slipped into easy jokes about burnt pancakes and early mornings. Their bond was practical and fierce. At the workshop's fifth anniversary, the community gathered. A line of former students introduced themselves as tradespeople and small business owners. A young woman spoke about how the workshop helped her support her child. When Andre took the microphone and credited the center for changing his life, the crowd cheered. Evelyn held the small, worn key Marcus had given her long ago and felt its ribbon thin with use. It was a symbol no press release could manufacture. Reporters asked whether they were together. Evelyn smiled. "We are together in the work," she answered. "Together in what matters." Evelyn found herself pulled back into memories she had carefully shelved. She remembered the cramped apartment with a radiator that rattled like a temper, the way Marcus would hum when fixing a radio, and the tiny victories that felt enormous at 19. Leaving had felt like necessary motion, but seeing Marcus now made her wonder what she had left behind. At the workshop, she met people whose stories did not fit magazine columns. Rosa, a young mother, learned to weld and then taught other women. Andre, who had been suspended from school, found direction and a job repairing bikes. Each story was modest and stubborn, the kind that stitched neighborhoods back together. Evelyn listened, and something in her shifted. She wanted her gifts to become scaffolding rather than spectacle. There were practical tensions. Her board questioned investments that lacked immediate returns. Donors wanted logos on every wall. Marcus worried the center would be co-opted. They had difficult conversations, late nights reconciling budgets and values, debates over autonomy and sustainability. Evelyn used business tools. Marcus used community wisdom. Slowly, they forged a structure that protected the workshop's independence while making it viable. They made mistakes. An equipment shipment arrived late. A class had poor attendance. But the resilience they built was real. Former students organized fundraisers, selling handcrafted items and offering repair services. Neighbors volunteered. The workshop became less Evelyn's project and more the community's heartbeat. Their personal relationship evolved, too. They argued about small things, missed calls, differing priorities, but arguments ended with pragmatic fixes, a shared calendar, responsibilities clarified. Afternoon coffees became routine. Marcus taught Evelyn how to plane wood properly. She helped secure a grant. The intimacy between them was practical and tender, a partnership built from respect. Over the years, critics softened. Reporters came to tell stories of real change. Investors saw workforce development potential. Evelyn still spoke on stages, but her message shifted. She now emphasized humility and long-term investment in people. Marcus watched the workshop gain legitimacy without losing its soul. At the fifth anniversary, a line of former students introduced themselves as tradespeople and small business owners. A young woman spoke about how the workshop helped her support her child. When Andre took the microphone and credited the center for changing his life, the crowd cheered. Evelyn held the small, worn key Marcus had given her long ago and felt its ribbon thin with use. It was a symbol no press release could manufacture. Reporters asked whether they were together. Evelyn smiled. "We are together in the work," she answered. "Together in what matters." The shock that people expected had never been a cinematic reconciliation. Instead, it was a quiet redirection, a key, a workshop, and a steady commitment to make things that last. The gesture Marcus made was simple and true, and it changed how Evelyn measured success. She began to measure by hands lifted steady in work, by paychecks cashed, by smiles earned through labor. Years later, the workshop hummed with a life of its own. Former students taught the next generation. Evelyn still appeared in magazines, but when she walked into the workshop, people called her by her first name and not by her title. Marcus kept his radio and his humor. Their relationship settled into a companionship forged by shared purpose rather than revived romance. In the end, the most surprising thing was not that they met again, but that a small gesture, the ribbon key and the invitation to witness a life of honest work, completely reframed everything. It taught them both that the richest returns are often measured not in headlines, but in dignity, possibility, and the slow work of building. They never returned to the naivete of youth, nor did they pretend their reunion erased the years. What changed was the measure of what mattered. Evelyn still negotiated deals that reshaped markets, but she also came to value the afternoon when a teenager nailed his first dovetail and grinned as if he had discovered a new planet. Marcus still fixed engines and taught classes with the same steady patience. But he also learned to trust that resources could multiply the lives he cared for. The key, once a small token, had become a heavier thing. A reminder that access matters more than applause, and that the labor of many is the truest legacy. They kept the ribbon key on a small shelf and passed it on to apprentices who would carry the work forward.